Paramahansa Parivrajakachaja Sutara Sacha Śrīmad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Shri Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Shri Shri Radha Govinda Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Braja Bhumi Vrindavan Dham ki, Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Chaitra Dham ki, Ganga Maya ki, Jamuna Maya ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanandi. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to some of the devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Shivadaya Krishna Prasthapaguli Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Samati. So we'll do a short reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 6, At Home in India. Prabhupada has a great sense of humor. We left off where Prabhupada was interacting with Harikesh Prabhu. We could just repeat that since it is humorous. Everybody's been to Vrindavan, of course, right? Everyone's been to Vrindavan now. You know the bell outside the temple. It rings every hour. It chimes all the hours, and then it rings every half hour. And during the arati, it rings continuously. So Prabhupada was basing the whole management for their benefit on the ringing of this bell. So he said, one night at midnight, he woke Harikesh, his traveling secretary. Do you hear that? Demanded Srila Prabhupada. Harikesh strained to hear. I don't hear anything. You can't hear it? Repeated Prabhupada. I'm sorry, but I can't hear anything. That's right. Go out and wake up the chowkidar and make him ring the bell. Harikesh went out into the darkness, woke the sleeping chowkidar, got him to ring the bell, and then returned to sleep. And so did the chowkidar. At 12:30, Prabhupada again rang, because it's supposed to ring every half hour, hour and a half hour. Did you hear it again? No, Srila Prabhupada, said Harikesh. So go out and wake him again. So anyway, that was the funny part. We'll continue where we left off. Prabhupada's morning walks were usually filled with managerial and administrative talks, as he pointed out how the devotees could prevent being cheated, how they could save and collect money, how they could keep the temple clean, and so on. These talks were directed at specific individuals and were usually marked by criticism. Morning walks, therefore, were sometimes tense. One morning, Gunanava was the vice president under Akshayananda. They were co-managing, actually, co-presidents. Gunanava invited Prabhupada to see the new book display. In a sincere effort to please Prabhupada, the devotees had set up a book display just inside the entrance to the temple. There were bookshelves with built-in lighting, a display case, and counter for sales. Still there, same display. Showing off the book display was a triumph for the temple managers. The lights worked, and Srila Prabhupada's books were neatly placed. The GBC secretary for Vrindavan, Gopal Krishna, was also present, telling Srila Prabhupada that actually the temple was first class and that things were now going smoothly. You know there's a punchline to this, right? As Gopal Krishna, Akshayananda Swami, Gunanava, and others pointed out the features of the book display, Srila Prabhupada was silent, then suddenly agitated. You say that everything is first class, he said, but I see that it is fifth class. Just see. He banged his cane on the floor and then lifted it up, pointing. I have come 6,000 miles to tell you about a bird's nest. The assembled devotees all looked up to behold a large bird's nest within the chandelier. Birds were nesting there amid the protruding straw. Yet until now, no one had noticed the dirty, unsightly presence. Srila Prabhupada had explained in his letters and books that one duty of a spiritual master is to expose the faults in his disciples, even if the fault is only slight. And the qualified disciple considers himself bereft of spiritual knowledge, always a fool before his spiritual master. He therefore considers the spiritual master's criticisms as mercy. It's very especially sweet to read about Vrindavan. One day, Srila Prabhupada was meeting with the temple managers. He wanted practical ideas, not sentiments. He complained about overspending in Vrindavan, and now in Bombay also, where construction was just beginning. You will squander money here, he said, and Surabi will squander money there. What is your plan to stop this? What will you do? No one knew what to say. There was a long silence. Finally, Akshayananda spoke up. We will become Krishna conscious. An impractical suggestion, Srila Prabhupada recalled. Akshayananda Swami regularly expected the thunderbolt, but that didn't keep him from wanting to be with Srila Prabhupada. On one morning walk, Prabhupada mentioned how the climate in Vrindavan was very harsh, both in summer and in winter. In winter, he said, the cold would sometimes be accompanied by rain. But, Prabhupada said, Akshayananda, even if it rains stool and urine and pus and blood from the sky, still we should stay in Vrindavan? Srila Prabhupada gave an almost impish smile and said, oh, you are expecting? The devotees burst out laughing. Another time Akshayananda Swami asked, is it true that it says in the Shastra that if you pass stool once a day you are a yogi, twice a day you are a bhogi, and 3 times a day you are rogi? Rogi means diseased person. Bhogi means sense enjoyer. Yes, said Prabhupada, and he kept walking. After a while he added, but don't try for passing stool once a day. Acha, responded Akshayananda. Srila Prabhupada smiled. Do you think if you pass stool once a day that you are a yogi? We'll read this next passage because it's also instructive. Harisari had little personal association with his spiritual master. But one day, Harisari was the temple commander at the time. This is 1975. But one day in Vrindavan, Prabhupada asked to see him to point out a serious discrepancy. As temple commander, Harisari had asked an old man not to eat in front of the deity in the temple. The old man had become upset, and a young Bengali man had defended him, shouting at Harisari that he had no right to criticize anyone in the temple. Okay. Harisari had attempted to ignore him, but the young Bengali had continued shouting and threatening to throw him out of the temple and cut off his shika. Finally, Harisari had twisted the young man's arm and had told the chowkidar to throw him out. Srila Prabhupada soon heard of the incident and called for Harisari. Unfortunately, these things happen to us all too often in the early days. How inauspicious, Harisari thought. The first time my spiritual master has ever called for me, and it's over a bad incident like this. Prabhupada did not immediately reprimand him, but first asked for his version of what had happened. Just see the the sequence. Prabhupada was expert. Harisari appreciated the opportunity and he began to tell the whole story. When he mentioned that the old man had asked to speak with an authority and that he had told him he was the temple commander, Srila Prabhupada interrupted. Prabhupada gave his disciple a penetrating glance. Temple commander does not mean commander-in-chief. Where have you heard this about eating prasadam in front of the deity? It's actually a nectar of devotion. But Harisari could not remember an exact reference and he became embarrassed. Well, I thought I read it in one of your books, Srila Prabhupada, he said. Prabhupada looked at him again. He could understand his disciple's ignorant mistake. Because of the boy's inexperience in India, he had not understood the serious implications of what he had done. Actually, because of the sensitive relationship between ISKCON devotees and the residents of Vrindavan, he should have tolerated the abuse. His was an ignorant mistake, but ignorance was no excuse. This is a great offense, said Srila Prabhupada. He will go out and tell so many people that the foreigners have thrown him out. This is very bad. Prabhupada looked gravely at Harisari. Now you find out where this young man is staying, and you bring him back here. Invite him to come back. Harisari tried his best, looking all day for the young Bengali man, who was reportedly staying at a hotel in Mathura. He was unsuccessful, however. Disappointed, he returned to the temple. And as soon as he returned, a devotee came and told him Prabhupada wanted to see him. Oh no, he thought. Now Prabhupada will be really angry. Harisari entered Srila Prabhupada's room, which was filled with guests. This boy has come, said Prabhupada. And as Harisari looked around, he saw the young Bengali man. The man smiled and said, Hare Krishna. They embraced and began to make apologies. So you give him this fruit, said Prabhupada to Harisari, indicating a basket of fruit sitting on the floor. He then dismissed them and continued preaching to the others in the room. The disagreement was settled, but it had been Prabhupada himself who had changed the young man's heart and rectified a volatile incident. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from 2nd Canto, 3rd chapter, text 20, chapter titled Pure Devotional Service. I'll repeat each word. Bile, Bator Kramam, Vikraman, Ye, Na, Srinvatak, Karnam, Pute, Narasya, Divasati, Dadurikeva, Sutta, Na, Chopagayatiti, Urgaya, Gataha, Bile Batur Kramar Vikramanye, Bile Batur Krama Vikramanye, Nashin Vatakana Putena Rasya, Nashin Vatakana Putena Rasya, Jivasiti Dadurike Vasuta, Jivasiti Dadurike Vasuta, Nacho Pagatyat Yurgaya Gataha, Nacho Pagayat Yurgaya Gataha. Please chant. Bile Baturu Krama Vikramanye, Na Śhrīmad Bhāgavatam Rasya Nivasiti Dādurikeva Sutta Nachopagayat Yurugaya Gataha Bile Baturukrama Vikramane Nashindvata Kanapute Narasya Jivasiti Dādurikeva Sutta Nashindvata Kanapute Narasya Nivasiti Dādurikeva Sutta Nachopagayat Yurugaya Gataha Bile Baturukrama Vikramanye Nashindvata Kanapute Narasya Nivasiti Dādurikeva Sutta Nachopagayat Yurugaya Gataha. Ladies. Bile Baturukrama Vikramanye Nashindvata Kanapute Narasya Nivasiti Dādurikeva Sutta Nachopagayat Yurugaya Gataha Bile Baturukrama Vikramanye Nashindvata Kanapute Narasya Jivasiti Dādurikeva Sutta Nachopagayat Yurugaya Gataha Bile snake holes, bata, like, urukrama, the Lord who acts marvelously, vikraman, prowess, yea, all these, na, never, shrinvatak, heard, karnapute, the ear holes, narasya, of the man, jiva, tongue, asati, useless, dādurika, of the frogs, eva, exactly like that, sutta, O Sutta Goswami, na, never, cha, also, upagayati, chants loudly, urugaya, worth singing, gataha, songs. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and who has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of a snake, and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Purport. Devotional service to the Lord is rendered by all limbs or parts of the body. It is the transcendental dynamic force of the spirit soul. Therefore, a devotee is engaged 100% in the service of the Lord. One can engage in devotional service when the senses of the body are purified in relation with the Lord. And one can render service to the Lord with the help of all the senses. As such, the senses and the action of the senses are to be considered impure or materialistic, as long as they are employed only in sense gratification. The purified senses are engaged not in sense gratification, but in the service of the Lord in toto. The Lord is the supreme with all senses, and the servitor, who is part and parcel of the Lord, also has the same senses. Service to the Lord is the completely purified use of the senses, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord imparted instructions with full senses, and Arjuna received them with full senses, and thus there was a perfect exchange of sensible and logical understanding between the master and the disciple. Spiritual understanding is nothing like an electrical charge from the master to the disciple, as foolishly claimed by some propaganda mongers. Everything is full of sense and logic, and the exchange of views between the master and disciple is possible only when the reception is submissive and real. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one should receive the teaching of Lord Chaitanya with intellect and full senses, so that one can logically understand the great mission. In the impure state of a living being, the various senses are fully engaged in mundane affairs. If the ear is not engaged in the service of the Lord, by hearing about Him from Bhagavad Gita or Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, certainly the holes of the ear will be filled with some rubbish. Therefore, the messages of Bhagavad Gita and Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam should be preached all over the world very loudly. That is the duty of a pure devotee who has actually heard about them from the perfect sources. Many want to speak something to others, but because they are not trained to speak on the subject matter of Vedic wisdom, they are all speaking nonsense, and people are receiving them with no sense. There are hundreds and thousands of sources for distributing mundane news of the world, and people of the world are also receiving it. Similarly, the people of the world should be taught to hear the transcendental topics of the Lord, and the devotee of the Lord must speak loudly so that they can hear. The frogs loudly croak, with the result that they invite the snakes to eat them. The human tongue is especially given for chanting the Vedic hymns, and not for croaking like frogs. The word asati is used. The word asati used in this verse is also significant. Asati means a woman who has become a prostitute. A prostitute has no reputation for good womanly qualities. Similarly, the tongue, which is given to the human being for chanting the Vedic hymns, will be considered a prostitute when engaged in chanting some mundane nonsense. Translation again. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of a snake and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Garanjana Shakaya Chakshur Amulatamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Bangulam Lankayate Ganam Yat Kripatamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinatanam. This is a very nice verse, quoted and paraphrased by Srila Prabhupada many, many times. And a very apt analogy, in case someone was not versed in serpent anatomy. Snakes have no ears, so that's why the ear hole's like a snake. In other words, there are no ear holes. Snakes detect vibrations only, not sounds. So we certainly don't want to become like some snake or like the frog who has a tongue, but the frog doesn't use his tongue to make sound. The frog's tongue is only used for capturing insects. And the real sound from the frog coming from the croaking is generated by a different instrument. There's a bladder. So two useless attributes: snake holes, ear holes, and insect tongue. So we should be very careful. And anyone who's lived in the country has observed these things. It's almost impossible at times to sleep due to the croaking of frogs. If there's any body of water, even a swimming pool, the frogs come out in mass at night and just croak. It's an incredible cacophony. And yes, and the snakes all converge on that location because they hear the vibration. They don't hear the sound. It's so tumultuous that they can pick up the vibration. The snake can actually also, his tongue can sense vibration. That's why they put it out. For them, it's such an advanced instrument. It performs so many functions. But otherwise useless for all intents and purposes. So here it's described that, and all this comes to the point of impure senses. So we know that there's, for us, Bhagavad Gita, as Prabhupada has indicated, gives us very clear instructions with regards to the senses. Bhogaishvarya prashaktanam taya parita chetasam. But one who is too much attached to sense gratification, resolute determination does not take place. And actually, that Vyavasaimaka Prabhupada quotes in 241 and 244, that same word, Vyavasayatmaka, Buddhir Ekeha Kuru Nandana. So there's one pointed attention. This focus is not something that comes naturally. We see that in general, people are very easily distracted. And therefore, there's a high premium paid on discipline, willpower, focus. And people talk about it in all these seminars, and they make a great attempt to try to bring this particular trait out. Not very easy. But for the devotee who is accustomed to chanting the holy name, chanting in the temple room, chanting in a holy place, chanting in some conducive atmosphere for the requisite number of rounds, he very easily develops this ability to focus. And of course, conversely, if one is not able to concentrate on his chanting, then his mind will continue to remain disturbed or unfocused. So this practice is not just, sometimes we're accused of mindless repetition, of being brainwashed. But if you ask any of these persons, so you sit down and chant with us for 1.5, 2 hours. It's like when kids, when they're young, they stare at each other to see who blinks first. We'll see if you can sit for 2 hours and chant the holy names. If you can sit for 2 hours and do anything, practically speaking, except play video games. You know that people die playing video games? It happens more often than you think. They literally die playing video games. They forget to eat, forget to drink, and just die. They're so much involved in the virtual reality that they forget about the actual reality. So everything has a lesson for us, and where we certainly want to develop this willpower, this ability to bring about determination in such a way that it serves your spiritual purposes. Right? The term Dridha Vrata, great determination. All these things Krishna is telling Arjuna, but he's not quite getting it in the beginning. So he's, of course, Krishna's not speaking. I remember we asked Prabhupada, how long did did the discourse of Bhagavad Gita take? Prabhupada said not more than 45 minutes. Not more than 45 minutes. And so in that 45 minutes, we see, where Krishna was sort of telling Arjuna the summary, condensed as essence, just like the Chatur Shlok. But Arjuna, for our benefit, of course, had to hear the whole thing. But for us, even in the second chapter, summary study, everything is there. And here again, pure devotional service. In 1975, when Prabhupada came to Henry Street, he was lecturing from second canto, because that's what we had at the time. So this hearing Prabhupada's purports at that time, in this regard, enlivened everyone. There are still, we were not untested, but at the same time, the only challenges we really faced in those days were rising early, taking a cold shower, and going on Harinam all day long. There was no real palace intrigue in those days. Okay? So everyone was blissful, ecstatic. Some people say, how do we foster that mood again? How do we? Well, you have to reinstate Srila Prabhupada's program, morning and evening program. We were discussing yesterday with one of the devotees. I was mentioning, yes, we would go out all day and we would rush back to be able to shower and change and get ready for the 7 o'clock arti. The New York kirtans were famous. We had cassette tapes. Anyone remember those cassette tapes? The New York kirtans with, at that time there were so many kirtan leaders. There was Bharadraj and Parikshit and Agni Dev, and it was like the best thing of the whole day, actually. Because in Mangal Arati it's a little somber in the sense that you're not manifesting the full ecstasy. You're still kind of a little, getting around. The blood is starting to circulate, and But by the evening artik, we had to put special floor jacks in the basement because the floor used to bow so much from the devotees dancing up and down. 100 plus devotees dancing in a small room 20 feet wide by 75 feet long. The whole building would shake. Literally the whole building would shake. So that ecstasy is there. And it's not rocket science in one sense. A devotee asked Prabhupada, how do we become enthusiastic? And it's a famous response, everyone knows. Prabhupada said, by following all the little rules and regulations. Because that, again, back to the point, it keeps one focused. And it keeps one under the shelter of the spiritual master. Because where are these instructions coming from? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So this connection serves one just like when we go out in inclement weather, we put on a raincoat or we put on a layer of something to protect us from the elements. So following these little rules and regulations are like putting on the Narayan Kabacha, the armor, the same as putting on tila, same as everything else. Everything has a purpose. It's not just, somebody says, why do you wear this? When we were in the early days, we would go out on the street Sankirtan, and people say, wipe that mustard off your face. This is in New York, of course. I don't think you'd get that anyplace else. But that, these are the types of things, that and you have to consider, wait, no, these people are just ignorant and innocent. And we don't hold it against them. But we did prepare. when we would go on Sankirtan in the evening on Fifth Avenue or Broadway, Times Square, it's not the Times Square that you see today. Everywhere, both sides of the street, triple X and peep shows. And the crowds that attended these places were abominable, to say the least. Lowest class people, out drunk. But the devotees, in the mood of, this is the center of the universe in one sense, Times Square. Everyone knows Times Square. But there was some devotees in the back, and we would put car towels in our bead bag. And that became our defense mechanism. In the event that there was somebody gets hit up the side of the head with a bead bag with car towels, they don't know what happened. They thought those beads are really hard. People used to ask us, what's in that bag? Oh, beads. And a pair of car towels, just in case we want to do kirtan. So, we took precautions. But somehow or other, by Krishna's arrangement, by the good agency of our authorities, we were always engaged. There was no time for idleness. We cleaned the temple top to bottom on a regular basis. Daily, obviously some areas. And then weekly for the Maha cleanup. And again, it's not an artificial focus. Someone may think, they're just making me do this, like this. No. This Chaita Darpana Marjan, the cleansing of the heart. Yes, the chanting is there. What am I chanting? My dear Lord, please engage me in your service. And yes, that service is also more chanting, and so many other things. But it's service, and all of Krishna's service. Yasyasti bhaktiya bhagavati kinchana. Saragunas tatra samasite sura harava bhaktasya kato mahagunya manoratena asati daivatobihi. We are developing qualities that even the demigods don't have, just by performing menial service in the temple. And what is it doing? What is the result? It takes you off the mental platform. It takes you off the mental platform. That even we're engaging our senses, we're taking prasadam, we're eating the most relishable foodstuffs offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so yes, our senses are engaged. Sharira vidya jala jatendriya tarika. So everything we do, everything has a purpose. And here it's just such a simple thing. It's only difficult for the crooked, right? Prabhupada said, simple for the simple at heart, difficult for the crooked. Matirana Krishna paratak svatova mitobi padyeti grahavatanam adanta gobir vishatam tamisham punak punas chavati chavananam. An intelligent person sees that this sense gratification has gone on since time immemorial, and no one has achieved anything beyond the superficial, what can they talk about? You go into the supermarket and all the tabloids, what do the tabloids say? Nothing, just sex, 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 sex. That's all it is. And they can't think of newer ways. And they don't even understand that this is gold pot and iron pot, right? Lakahira, we told that story, Lakahira. The prostitute whose price was 100,000 pieces of diamond. 100,000 pieces of diamond. And who wanted to enjoy her pleasures? A leper. A leper. And who was facilitating this? The leper's wife. Such a chaste wife. The leper said to his wife, why aren't you happy? The wife said, why aren't you happy? He says, I want to enjoy with this Lakahira. She went and made some arrangement with she didn't have 100,000 pieces of diamond. She went to the prostitute and she made some arrangement. Whatever it was, we don't know the details. And so, she carried the leper in a basket to the prostitute's house. And the prostitute invited him in. She had this huge, elaborate feast set up. And everything in 2 pots, 1 gold pot, 1 iron pot. And so she began to serve him. And then she asked him, he says, do you taste any difference between the soup in the gold pot and the soup in the iron pot? And the leper was thoughtful. He said, no. It tastes the same. And what did she say? She said, why then have you come here? Why then have you come here? A gold pot and iron pot, the same. But they're trying to dress it up in different ways. And this has convulsed the entire material world. And of all things, what has brought about the rapid degradation. People are so thrilled to have the internet. Devotees, of course, utilize it properly. But 90% of the content of the internet is pornography. 90%. So it's a very hellish situation out there. But the devotees are developing a potency to penetrate that darkness of ignorance by achieving and maintaining a certain level of purity through this process. There is no other solution in the material world. Without this, Kali Yuga immediately overwhelms. Immediately. That is why this mission, especially in a city, is so important. The tendencies, the devotees are obviously cultivating the mode of goodness. And of course, if you're cultivating the mode of goodness, you're attracted to the mode of goodness. And the city is not the mode of goodness. So everybody wants to go to the country. You become a little purified. You don't want to stay anymore. You want to go someplace sattvic. So this is where the determination comes in. Why am I here? I'm here in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj to deliver the fallen conditioned souls. This is our mission. So this is not something easy. Prabhupada said it will not be easy. But it's glorious. The temple we had on 55th Street, as anyone who was there can tell you, regardless of whatever, minor discrepancies there were, nobody saw that. They only saw the ecstasy of the spiritual programs. There's always problems in the material world. You could always find fault. Right? Not just with things in general, but every endeavor covered to some degree by fault. So the devotee has to transcend those faults, that fault finding, that material vision. And you can't do it if you're engaged in sense gratification, trying to please the senses for selfish purposes. You have to be thinking that whatever I am doing should have a purpose. It's a purpose-driven life. The karmis do it. It's just that it's not the right purpose. And all the time, they're successful. They're millionaires, they're billionaires, they're trillionaires. Purpose-driven. But what's their purpose? To make money, to enjoy the senses. So that same success, just see what Srila Prabhupada did. One person, purpose-driven. One person. 3 trunks of books. No money. You know that story about Prabhupada coming in America with 40 rupees? Even Prabhupada used that. He did. He went to the dock in Calcutta with 40 rupees. But he gave it to his son to take a taxi back home. So when Prabhupada got on the boat, he literally had nothing. He didn't have that 40 rupees. Because 40 rupees in America is useless, and he knew that. So Vrindavan Day took the money and went home. 40 rupees. Vrindavan Day told us that story before he passed away. So this is, of course it's our example. But gradually as we distribute Prabhupada's books, he will become the example for everyone. Anyone who comes in contact with Prabhupada, you read Lilamrita, just like the movie. I know people who are as far away from Krishna consciousness as you can imagine, philosophically. They like the devotees, they see like that, but philosophically, they're all into the philosophy masala, everything, It's just a pinch of this, a pinch of that, whatever's there. It's just, But they saw that movie and they understood that what Prabhupada achieved could not be done by anyone else. It was not a simple human endeavor. It wasn't. They recognized that. This is purity. That's what they recognized and that's what we recognized. When we first met Prabhupada, we didn't know how do you tell? I mean, for us, we'd been in contact with so many cheaters, who came before Prabhupada, who were selling mantras or teaching yoga, or, just cheating people in general. But when you saw Srila Prabhupada and you heard him speak, you immediately, there was a transformation that this person is genuine. That this person is genuine. Somehow or other, by my great good fortune, I have come in contact with that person. It's inconceivable. But that transformation can take place for anyone reading Prabhupada's books or hearing Srila Prabhupada's lectures. It's not that one can't continue to recognize or can't recognize. No, you can. But we have to be pure in our efforts and pure in our intent. We're not just trying to, make some quota. Where we feel the compassion required in order to do this service properly. That is the key. It's like you'll see some persons who don't like what they do, and it's written all over their face. They hate it. And you're just another, inconvenience for them getting through their day. They have to put up with you. So this is not the mood of the devotee. The devotee is enthusiastic to deliver this transcendental literature. He sees there's no greater benefit to myself and to others. Otherwise, how did I come? How did anyone come? So it all comes back to the foundation. Prabhupada came with 3 trunks of books. This was the foundation, is the foundation. Books are the basis, So we have to continue. We have to hold on to this desire to remain pure. It's not easy in the current environment. It's easy not to be pure. This is the problem. It's very easy not to be pure. Every encounter is a decision that the devotee makes between Maya and Krishna. Every encounter. Even simple things. So we take advantage, of this opportunity to develop this firm foundation. It will serve you well for the rest of your career in Krishna consciousness if you can see things as in their actual context. That whatever I'm doing now is training. They have not that the military is expert in so many different things, but they are expert in certain things, like fighting. So you have to train in such a way that when you actually encounter a situation, that it's second nature. Right? You don't want to have someone go into a situation without any preparation. Mother Chiranti must know. They have the 6 P's. Everyone know the 6 P's? You don't know the 6 P's? Mother Chiranti, do you want to repeat them? Or? The 6 P's. Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. Those are the 6 P's. Okay? There, we've said it. Don't come into this category. This is how, not just in general, but this is how you fall down. This is what happens. This is what happens. You're not planning. Nobody plans to fall down. But you have to plan how not to fall down. And that means you have to consider the situation carefully. There are triggers everywhere. When you go to programs like, what do they call it? AA or NA. They talk about these things. They're called triggers. You have to know what your triggers are. And then you have to avoid them. As simple as it sounds, you have to know. Thinking, feeling, and willing. We could have wrote the book, technically. It's all coming from common sense. And everyone knows what Prabhupada said about common sense, right? If you don't have any, ask someone who does. So just, it's an interesting experience. Any way you look at it, make the best use of it. For the time you have, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. And you will never be the loser. You will never be the loser. This is the key. You will never be the loser. Don't think that, maybe my time could be better spent elsewhere. No. It's not possible. There is no such place. There is no such place. And if your mind is telling you that, then sadly you're in Maya. So, any questions or comments, my dear Ram Rai?
Even in New York, 73 or LA, 73, one of the lectures on the first campus, this is the only institution in the whole world that can rectify people's disease mentality.
Yep.
The only welfare.
Yes.
And then Prabhupada gave a maxim, purity is the force, and there's a letter, that our unique asset is our purity. We don't have to resort to fashionable slogans or terms.
Yeah. It is our unique asset. People can see it because you don't see purity everywhere. But it's a trait which is easily recognizable. You see it in children. It's called innocence. And when you see it in an adult, obviously he's not a child, that is purity. Purity of lifestyle, purity of purpose. Ahoitikaya patiyata yatma suprasidati. Unmotivated, unalloyed, uninterrupted. So we're very fortunate. Like I said, we can't imagine sometimes, and unfortunately sometimes you have to lose it to understand what it is, just like the song says. So, a smart person, he doesn't lose it, because he recognizes that, this is just a trick of Maya. But other than that, Nehabhakrama nasosti prativayana vidite. There's no loss or diminution. Prabhupada said, once having tasted the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord, one can never forget. Rasagraha. Rasagraha. He can never forget. He may try to forget. And sometimes you have to try, and they engage in so many abominable activities, and still they cannot forget. Still they cannot forget. Any other questions? Yes, at the bottom.
Yes, you were talking about thinking, feeling, and willing, and it reminded me of, in the introduction of Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada saying, thinking, feeling, and willing are all activities of the mind. And when we will to do something, the activity comes to be manifest by the gross bodily senses. Thus, in our mental activities, we should always try to think of Krishna and try to plan how to please him. So Prabhupada was saying, like, thinking means planning. So he was saying, like, plan not how to fall down.
Yeah. We have a mind, and it's working 24 hours a day. And the best use of it is to plan how to please Krishna all the time. Yes, Prabhu.
Taking a vow is like that. I've made up my mind. Harvey Ross gave a memoir in Paris, 1973 or 4. Question was asked, Prabhupada, how do you show your love for the spiritual master? And he was premeditating. Prabhupada said, love the spiritual master is shown by keeping your vow. You've made this promise, and you keep your vow.
Yes.
That's how you show your love for the spiritual master.
He would say the same thing whenever there was a marriage between the two devotees. That was his, you have taken his vow, and therefore it cannot be broken. Mr. Nard Rishi.
So this time when we met Sadhguru Maharaj, so I expressed wherever I went, just people appreciated his beloved work, and then said yes, of all his work, Lilamrita is the best.
Yes, because why? Because it's connected in a manner that one feels that he's come into the presence of Srila Prabhupada. This was a unique story that had to be told. And we see how impactful it has been on devotees and others in general, like that. Why? Because we're remembering, this pure devotee who came, just the thought of Srila Prabhupada elevates the consciousness. What to speak of every other, the purports, the books, the lectures, everything. Just thinking of Srila Prabhupada elevates your consciousness. His mannerisms, his demeanor, his everything about him, the way he walked, the way he talked, the way he said. Just like the Bhagavad Gita describes. Everything about him. So we're very fortunate. I can only keep saying that we're very fortunate because there's no other way to consider this, that it's causeless mercy. Yes.
How he has expressed the swan among the men who walked among us. We couldn't understand him, but after his departure, we regretted, and finally we tried to understand. And then by that time, he's already gone from our life. But when we start following him, then just we improved our spiritual life, and then it happened.
Yes, we know that following the footsteps, how powerful it is. Srila Prabhupada and a long line of acharyas in our parampara. We recognize when we read Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam, this is taking place 5,000 years ago and longer. But yet we're getting the benefit. And today there's a very special function, everyone knows. There's Bhagavat Saptaha, 5 p.m. in the temple room. Everyone is invited. We'll begin now and for 7 days read Bhagavatam. The Kunj Bihari. The Kunj Bihari is a very nice devotee, husband of Shobhamayi. And someone came forward and sponsored. They thought during this time of COVID, they can't come to the temple. But they saw that we're broadcasting different programs. They asked if we could perform this Bhagavad Saptaha. And of course, we've never really engaged in those things. You know, in India, they kind of do it as a, you know, pay to pray situation. Not pay to play, but pay to pray. But this person kindly said, no, I'll sponsor, please. You please do so. On behalf of the entire world, we'll be reading Bhagavad Saptaha for the next 7 days, every day, 5 to 7 in the evening.
Any particular section?
Well, from the beginning to the end.
Oh, wow.
From the beginning to the end. So this is a nice exercise. Like I said, we've never done it. But we've seen it done in India. In Radha Govinda Mandir in Jaipur, they do it regularly. And so we'll just examine the situation and see how it plays out on the World Wide Web. And we like I said, in an effort to try to connect with our larger community, congregation, etc. This is our humble attempt. So, and also it can be an introduction to our proposed evening program. You know, we want to see. Prabhupada called it a transcendental sandwich, but we've only been eating half a slice of bread for the last 40 years. So we want to try to put the two back together again. You know, is it possible? It may be. Yes, Krishna Kripavu.
I want to appreciate the fact that you're describing Srila Prabhupada's program of full engagement. And you reminded me of what Nava Yogendra Swami told us one time. He said he was in Africa and the temple president had misspent the money and the temple was in debt. And as a senior person, he asked Srila Prabhupada, what can I do to help? And Srila Prabhupada said, make sure the devotees go to the morning program, they go to the evening program, and they do something practical during the day. So he said he did that, and when he left Dāsa after 4 or 5 years, they had a new temple worth $2 or $3 million and all the debts were paid off. And that was his program.
And due to inflation, if we did that, we should expect much more. So we should certainly implement that as quickly as possible. You know, sometimes it's difficult if there's so many duties and people come back, but this sense of exhaustion was foreign to us. Of course, we were much younger then. I mean, at least I was. So, but we're not afraid to try to implement Prabhupada's instructions at any time. Because we've seen, just like here, by trying to implement Srila Prabhupada's instructions and to preserve, you know, the status quo of Radha Govinda, that nobody is a loser. Everything is so far been accomplished in a manner that nobody expected any success. They had actually no expectation of success in this regard. But if you do the right thing, you get the right result. So in any case, we should always do the right thing, and we will always get the right result. That's just, and you know, Krishna will test us, you know, collectively, individually. These things have to be accommodated according to one's level of understanding. You know, it's difficult to act beyond one's realization. But that's why we have a congregation, community, We have our God brothers, our God sisters. We're not here to just, exchange pleasantries. Every devotee has the capacity to hear, to advise. This is our nature, to try to assist others, in the same way that we were assisted by our elders. Without them, we would not be here. I can remember so many times, due to some disturbance, when a devotee would come and kind of just give me some perspective in order to, so that I could see things from a different angle and perhaps, adjust whatever needed to be adjusted. So we should take advantage of this association. You never know under the circumstances, a few months ago, everything seemed to be going fine, and all of a sudden, pandemic came, and devotees left for the four corners of the continental United States. And all of a sudden, we were just a few again. So somehow or other, we should just take advantage of all this association, especially Chandrasekhar Maharaj's association, and all the senior devotees, Narad Rishi, Krishna Kripa, Ram Roy. So, these are devotees with 40, 50 years of experience. When you go to a mechanic shop, you don't ask, who's the newest man here? I want his advice. No one would do that. He wants the most experienced mechanic. Maybe he's good looking and he's smartly dressed and his uniform's clean, but that's a giveaway. If his uniform's clean, he can't be a very expert mechanic. He has to be filled with grease from head to toe. Anyway, Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Śhrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Gaur Premanandi.